Hello everybody, I hope you're well. I'm Callum, I run Repair Wins, and in today's video I attempt to modify an Acer micro PC. So the story is it has some damaged front USB ports, and the idea of the video is that I need to take the machine apart, remove a bunch of internal circuitry in order to disable the USB ports, put the thing back together, put an SSD in, install Linux. This one doesn't run for as long as a typical video does, but I do end up coming across some I do end up having some issues, which I have to put right after the fact. So hopefully it does prove to be a bit interesting either way. I'm recording this one after the fact, which is unusual, but the original intro I recorded was just atrocious. I mean, the audio was broken. I clearly showed off the name of the company that donated the box in a way that it couldn't be edited out. Hence why I'm recording this intro now. It's a Veriton N4620G. I looked and it has a second generation i3, and surprisingly it's soldered to the board, although maybe that shouldn't be too surprising given how slim it is. Apparently it's quite easy to take apart. I just need to remove one screw from the back and then pretty much pop the cover off. It's got DVI, but it's analog compatible, so you can use a VGA adapter. It's got Wi-Fi built in, so I won't need the Ethernet port. Runs on a standard barrel jack. SD card audio, we're not going to use that, and then the two broken USB ports. I have checked the case over off camera, and this is the only visible screw. Oh, here we go. Yeah, I think I'm onto something here. Yeah, that was really simple. Everything's under this metal cover, so I suppose I'd best take that off. 4 screws removed. I might be speaking too soon here, but this seems pretty easy to work with. Genuine dust. The fan is a bit grimy, but it's not the end of the world. Yeah, I can kind of see that soldered CPU they were on about. Well, at least there's no socket or anything. It's got, I'm going to assume that's 4 GB of RAM. We're going to run a lightweight version of Linux. So I'll probably just put another 2 gig stick in there, call that a day. Oh, I think it's got an mSATA SSD slot, which will be really handy because I can just take the hard drive out and then put an mSATA SSD in, and we've got loads of those in our stock. That's the Wi-Fi card I was talking about, and a BIOS battery that's almost certainly going to be dead. To be honest, we're probably just going to remove this battery and get rid of it. There's a video on the channel where I took a Samsung netbook, and I pretty much soldered a standard connector to this bit of wire and ran it somewhere, but I'm not going to go to the same lengths of this laptop. If I'm looking at the USB ports anyway, that looks like it's going to be a nightmare to remove. It's kind of what I feared. It's 2 ports in one assembly. You can also see, if you look really closely, there's some 0 ohm resistors, if you can focus. You can just about see resistor here, resistor there, and then there's 4 more down below. Can I just remove these resistors, so 2 here, 4 there, 8 in total, and then remove sort of these 2 little chips here, and then the theory is the USB ports won't be getting any power. I mean, that might be a winning solution. So this capacitor is rated for 6.3 volts, look, 470 microfarad. And that is basically, you use that with USBs. You use it on a 5 volt rail. So what I've done is I've just cut it, because I don't want to remove the board to desolder it. And then we'll get a bit closer, cut there, and obviously that capacitor is now disconnected. And then we've got all of these little 0 ohm resistors, but I can now actually put flux on them and use hot air and remove them, you know, because there's no more danger of a capacitor blowing up. I've got my hot air station set to 480 degrees Celsius. I don't need to remove everything. For example, all the resistors can stay. I just need to remove the 2 sort of black chips, which I'll point to. This one and this one. It doesn't matter if I melt the back of the USB port a bit because it's not getting used, remember. Now, the reason why I'm removing the coils, so there's no power, as well as the chips that facilitate basically the data, is that if I just remove the power, but the data lines are all shorted to ground, that might cause other issues in the machine. I need some new tweezers. These ones are damaged, and so every time I'm trying to lift up slightly, they're just coming straight off the chip. There we go, that one's free as well. Right then, that's good, happy with that. So what I've done is I've just switched my soldering iron on. I've got it set to 365 degrees. It's easier to do a job like this while there's still heat in the board. I'm just going to use this stuff, solder wick, to basically wick away the old solder, as the name implies. There we go, those pads look good, and then we just do the neighbouring ones. Lovely. I've cleaned off the flux residue, and if I just bring you in nice and close, You can see the pads are nice and clean, no damage whatsoever. There's no problem with doing it this way. The back of the USB port is ever so slightly singed, but I'm going to give credit to Acer here. This is a really high quality PCB, and those USB ports are really high quality as well. I decided just to remove every resistor, and the reason why I've done that is that I realised these two were connected next to the capacitor, so they were obviously responsible for providing power. There's only 4 pins here and 4 pins there, so a USB 3.0 port, I believe, has got 6 data lines. So I think, 4, 8, and then, well, that only adds up to 8, but there's at least 12 data lines. And I could just see other resistors around the board and whatnot, and I was thinking, I know that they will in some way connect up with this port, so the easier thing to do was just to take everything off. That guarantees there's no more connection, and this can be as shorted as you want. It's just isolated, Alright then, I'm very happy with the USB port, so the next step is to take the board out so I can remove the hard drive. So there you are, that's the SSD nice and secure. You can get away with 1 screw, by the way, but might as well just put 2 in there. Right then, RAM's installed, so now we can begin basically taking the thing apart. There we go. And then we can take the heatsink off. Right, so that should come off, and we'll worry about cleaning it and getting rid of the dust later. I'll just put these two together and put them out of the way. And now that that's done, I can remove the motherboard. So I'm thinking I'll take this screw out. It's just for the audio jacks. I might actually just remove those in their entirety because they aren't needed. Either way though, I'll put that just out of the way. And then, it's fairly interesting. I think Dell do the same thing on some of their PCs. But they've got these standoffs that are secure in the top case. But they're also holding the motherboard. Right, this doesn't want to come out just yet. There's obviously more that's holding it down. So I can see there's a screw there. I suppose I may as well take that out. I'll take the Wi-Fi card out just in case there's a hidden screw beneath it, because they sometimes do that. No hidden screw, okay. This is slightly confusing now. I'm just going to pause for a moment, work out where the screw is, and then come back. It turns out there was no hidden screw. There's just a little catch holding this down, so when you try and lift, basically the USB port was being held in place by the catch. So you bend it backwards slightly. You can then clear the catch. And I'm still going to be gentle because I'm not certain the board's free, but no, there you are. Board comes free. Oh, and that's good of them. They've got a cooler under here, and I'm going to get, yeah, that's for the chipset. Because a lot of the time, these manufacturers don't bother. They just let the chipset cook. I'm pleased to report the board looks really good. Everything's very clean. So I can just basically take the 4 screws out to remove the hard drive. So don't just flip it over because the hard drive is going to put loads of stress on the SATA connector. I'm supporting the hard drive with my hand, and now I can flip it over. And then I should just be able to slide it back. Yeah, there you go. Brilliant. Off camera, I've removed the dust from the fan and from the heatsink. So now it's time to clean the thermal paste off, which I'll just do using a few cotton buds. I've done this a couple times in some past videos, but I know that my channel's not big enough that most people who watch this will have seen any of the past videos, so why don't I just do it again? So I'll just clean thermal paste off, cotton bud. We're not doing this perfectly because we'll do it perfectly in the next step. We're just getting the majority away. This is already looking pretty good, actually. Lovely. I'll just pick up all the stuff that's landed on my desk. Second cotton bud. Keeping my hand to the side to minimise shadows. Shadows aren't normally this bad. Anyway then, you can see that heatsink is nice and clean. You don't need to worry about getting the rest of it perfect. Make sure the copper pad is as clean as you can get it. Make sure the CPU die is also clean. And then plenty of thermal paste. I'm never stingy with this stuff. It's non-conductive. The excess just squeezes out. And then I've probably done this backwards because the board needs to go back into the housing first. We can just slide this in. The added bonus of removing the hard drive and replacing it with an SSD isn't just that it's less moving parts. SSDs are more efficient, and there isn't this big block of material blocking air anymore, so the airflow should be a lot better. We're going to get the heatsink put back on, so the heatsink obviously goes this way. Just set it down on the top. I'll just put the screw that I took out of the housing in, if you can remember. There's a screw here. Nearly there, ladies and gentlemen, because if you remember, we've just got the 4 motherboard standoffs. Typically, it's easier to start them off by hand, and then when they're started off by hand, you just do the rest. Obviously with a screwdriver or your pliers. Easy to remove, but quite fiddly to put back on. And with this final screw, this mini saga is complete. I wasn't expecting to use the computer with HDMI, but I've just plugged it into this screen. You heard the beep. CPU, how much RAM has it got? 6 gigs, perfect. That's about the right amount that we need. And what's nice as well is that the SSD is detected Toshiba blah 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 128 gig. Delete took me to the BIOS, and whilst I was in here, I've made a bunch of changes. So I went to advanced, I went to miscellaneous, nothing in there, but I went to integrated peripherals, for example, disabled the serial port, I enabled Pixie, and I just went through and pretty much changed everything. Anyway then, I can save and exit setup. It's not going to boot anything because I don't have a USB drive connected, but we can get CachyOS put on here and quickly mess around with it. I'm in the middle of installing CachyOS. You can see the machine's connected to the Wi-Fi. It's obviously working okay. I clearly don't have an Ethernet cable plugged into it anyway. I'm choosing XFCE as the desktop as opposed to KDE Plasma. KDE Plasma is set up out of the box, whereas XFCE needs a little bit of tinkering with, I think. But that's alright. I've chosen XFCE because it's much lighter on system resources. This computer's quite old. It only has 6 GB of RAM, and all it really needs to do is run a web browser. Hence, we don't need anything fancy. The computer isn't running terribly stably. It might just be a coincidence, but the first install failed with a bootloader error, and the second one is just stuck at 1.06 gigs. It's been here for ages, the keyboard is still alive, but what I've decided to do is to just put a capacitor back in the machine. So I've found one that's exactly the same, not that it will focus, 470 micro, 6.3 volts, so I'm going to take it back apart and solder it in. I've replaced the capacitor. I tried to do it the lazy way by soldering basically another capacitor just to the existing legs, but it was clear that wasn't going to work. So ironically, I had to take the entire board out anyway, and I've installed this Rubicon in its place. It's ever so slightly shorter than the pillar next to it, so fingers crossed it doesn't interfere with the top housing. Good news, the operating system installed. We're now in CachyOS. You can see it says CachyOS hello. There's recognition circular, and here is the XFCE desktop. All seems to be working well. Obviously you can see the device name, the version that I'm running. The processor, it says 5.6 gigs of RAM because some of it's reserved because it's basically an iGPU. I've just entered the command that does all the updates, and I'm going to hit enter. It's not really going to have to do anything because it would have updated during the installation. Unsurprisingly then, it only took 21 seconds, so I can just close the terminal, double click, Firefox is now open because you can see on this bar down at the bottom, we've got terminal, we've got File Explorer, Web Browser, Application Finder, and then that's the home folder, I suppose. All we need is just pretty much Firefox Web Browser. Can skip all of these settings and whatnot. I'll go and make tweaks in the background that aren't relevant, because you see, you don't want to see all this junk when you start the computer up. You don't need all these adverts being shown to you. Firefox is obviously a free browser, though. They have to make their money somewhere. The point is, we've got 2 bits of software, both of them running web browser. We're going to pretty much bookmark them, and then this computer will be ready for what we need it for. There you have it then. I've taken that 13-year-old computer and I've turned it into something that's actually usable again. It was obviously a computer that was destined for landfill. There's no way that any business would have taken it on with the aim of, repairing it and selling it, given it's only worth sort of 40 or 50 pounds, because a technician's time would have been considerably greater in terms of an expense than the machine's actually worth. Thus, it was only ever destined to landfill. So I'm happy that basically I spent the time to repair it. As you saw in the photos, it's in use at the non-profit. I took the photo pretty much just to show the machine off before we had a wireless barcode scanner, but now that we do have a wireless barcode scanner, the idea is someone stands at the machine, they manipulate the context boxes, they click around the menus and enter the relevant information, and then somebody else just stands across the room. They'll scan the shelf, they'll scan the device that's going on the shelf, they'll do all the other stuff. I'm not the one who wrote the software, I don't know how it all works, I'm just the one who maintains the equipment. Either way then, I hope you found the video useful. I hope you saw some sort of a technique that you hadn't seen before, or maybe it's given you an idea, or maybe the motivation to tackle a project of your own. If that's the case, then feel free to leave it a like. Everybody asks, but it helps. It helps my channel grow, it helps the video get more views, and obviously the more views it gets, the more chance that somebody else takes their device and they repair it. Obviously the end aim being that as many people as possible are fixing as many devices as possible, and the repair message is spreading as far as possible. No, I don't script these things. Sometimes stuff like that sounds decent just comes out. What do you want from me? Even better then, if you're really enjoying the stuff that's going on around here, then feel free to hit the subscribe button. It's free. You can always change your mind if you don't want to stay subscribed, no harm done. But it's going to allow you to see the videos that I upload, for the most part, because YouTube doesn't always work, but the videos I upload as and when I upload them. You can see basically me modifying a scrap computer, me tinkering with junk old laptops, me repairing
you know, stuff like this, or PlayStation controllers. You know, I do try and make sure there's a wide variety of stuff on the channel. You don't want to be that guy who's just doing Nintendo Switch charging port replacements. You don't just want to be doing backlight fuses on laptops, or, you know, PlayStation controller potentiometers. As far as I'm concerned, there needs to be a lot of variety, otherwise the content isn't interesting, and that sort of makes up for lower audio quality, lower video quality, though I am trying to improve those things as well. Anyway then, as I say, if you want to see where the channel ends up going, feel free to hit the subscribe button. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you in the next one. Fingers crossed it's out in sort of a week or so's time. That's at least a schedule I aim for. But until then, I'll see you later. Take care for now, and goodbye.